I'm sure that most of us have what I would call passers-by in your life. These are people who are not necessarily friends or people that you hang out with or even know very well. But there are people who cross your path. Maybe it's the way they walk. Maybe it's the words they say or the look in their eyes. But they carry themselves with a sense of grace. And even though you don't know that person very well, when you see that person, you go, yeah, I just like being in that person's presence. It's like with some of you, we don't all hang out together. We see each other on Sunday, maybe on Thursday. Sometimes you can just make a look or the way you walk or some little thing you say, and it just gets inside my guts and changes my day. Jesus was probably the ultimate passerby. I mean, he comes into town, and he doesn't have anything except the robe and sandals and maybe a little purse. And everybody just wants a glimpse of Jesus. And it's like in the gospel lesson and the words we just said in Owen's baptism, these people want Jesus to just have the kids sit on his lap and for a blessing, and the disciples get all irritated because Jesus is so busy, and Jesus says, wait a second, stop it. Bring the kids to me and forbid them not. For my kingdom is such that if you don't receive the kingdom of God like a little kid with a sense of joy and happiness, you're not going to get in. Because, when you see Jesus, you see God. When you get a glimpse of Jesus, you get a taste of who God is. In the second lesson for today that was just read, it says that Jesus is the reflection of God's glory. Jesus is the imprint of who God is. It's for so long, people are looking for this king and looking for some kind of great miracle. And here this humble guy comes into town with nothing except a robe and sandals and a few words. And that's God. The simplicity and the humility and the gentleness of the way Jesus walks. Jesus is the reflection of God. He's a passerby who loves kids. He's the ultimate passerby who you don't want to pass by, because that is how God comes into our life. Speaking of passersby, I had kind of a different day Wednesday. There's this Lutheran minister who I've gotten to know bit by bit over the years. His daughter and family go to the church, and when he retired, he would come once in a while to visit. And we ministers can be a pretty weird lot. Sometimes ministers come here because they want to see me screw up and make them feel better. Or I go somewhere else to find out if I'm doing the right thing. But not Mark. A pastor in Wisconsin. He would just come here with his family, he'd settle in, and he just worshiped. And he was so affirming of our church and affirming of me. He was just gracious. And he didn't compare anything, he just was who he was. And somehow the look in his eyes and the way he talked and interacted with his family, it just touched my heart. And he died recently. And his funeral was Wednesday. And he died with the kind of grace and goodness that he lived. At the very last minute, I decided to chuck what I was doing and drive up to Beaver Dam for the funeral. At the very heart and soul of what I believe, and I'm not the most knowledgeable brick on the block. And my understanding of theology in the Bible is limited at times. But at the very heart and soul of what I believe, the very thing that fuels my passion every day, the thing that gives me strength when I don't feel strong, gets my faith when my soul is wrinkled, is the belief that God lives in the very fiber of the heart and soul of each one of us. That is precisely where Jesus lives. In you, in me, we just need to kind of let it out and walk in that spirit. And as Jesus reflects the gentle power of God's love, we're called to do the same thing to the best of our ability. In the way that we take care of our family and our friends and go to work and play, we're called to exude the gentleness and passion of Jesus for the goodness of life. Whenever I saw Pastor Mark, whenever I saw him sitting in one of our chairs, somehow his eyes and his heart spoke to me. And I kind of got a glimpse, without having to say a word, of that humble carpenter. So I'm sitting in a pew in a church in Beaver Dam, Wisconsin. And there's already 5 clergy doing the service. Nobody knew I was a minister. It was fun, except the family. I just sat there and worshiped. I just sat there and paid respects to a guy who was a passerby in my life and thanked him for the gifts of spirit that he has given me over the years. A gentleman who inspired me and challenged me without even trying and without even knowing it. Well, I had to leave the service early. You put 5 ministers together, it takes a little time. But I got here just in time to do a service for a Vietnam veteran at Colonial Chapel. And then that evening, after the service, I had to come and lock up the church. And there's this crazy Lithuanian who strip waxed and waxed our church. You think these lights are bright? Go look at the floor in Charter Hall. And so the guy came here to do it, and he said, can you let me in at 6 o'clock in the morning to get the floor done? I said, sure. So on my way to Wisconsin, I stop here, I let him in. I get back to church about 8 or 8:30 at night, and the guy's still doing the floor. And I said, what are you still doing here? And he said, well, you know something? It needed to be done. I like this place, and I want it to be perfect for you and your congregation. And then I walk in here, and the carpet cleaner is still here. And I go, Ron, what are you still doing here? You came here at 7 o'clock in the morning. It's 14 hours later. He says, I like the vibes in this place. I want the carpet to be perfect for your congregation. Well, before leaving the church, and they're still working, I reach into my magic backpack, and I give them each a crisp $50 bill. And the guy goes, what are you doing that for? I said, that's what goofy Lutherans do to people that work overtime. It's just the way it is. So it's late. And I get into my pickup truck, and I start to leave, and I pause in the middle of the parking lot. And I look back at the church. And I thought of Mr. Thompson and Maddie. I thought of a pastor named Mark. I saw that the lights were still on in the church. And I think of those 2 goofs still working to make sure everybody's happy. And I'm reminded once again exactly how close Jesus is to us every single day. Amen. If you're able to, please rise for the creed. It's on page 105.